They're relatively inexpensive. They don't require electricity or ammunition. Again, mag lights, can't really have enough. Highly recommend getting a large permanent Sharpie with a huge tip on it. You never know when you need to write large notes or letters or a signal, basically write signals. This is actually a paint Sharpie, so you can shake it. They tend to last a really long time as long as they're strongly capped, and I would actually recommend getting some parafilm and wrapping it around it just to make sure that it keeps the moisture in so it doesn't go bad over time. You never know when you're going to need to write a signal or write something else that might have to be pretty large, and a regular Sharpie is going to go out pretty quick. And I guess this could have went with the camping stuff, but again, military style compass, we'll just put it that way. It's actually pretty good. I got it pretty cheap, again on Amazon. It's cheap, but it's well made. It's very well built. Nothing's loose. I've taken it out and used it pretty accurate. It's just a pretty standard compass. It's got your your slope, your rangefinder. You can actually, one of the cool things I like about it is, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but it's got a little magnifying thing there, and it's also got a little leveler in it, just to give you extra support on your land nav. If you're anything like me, which hopefully you're not, land navigation and night land nav is not exactly your strong suit. Just give me my GPS and send me on my way. Oh yeah, this was in the mess kit. I guess I left it out. It's worth getting a little multi-utensil tool. They're really small. I mean, fits my hand. I don't need it. Nice to have. Universal handcuff key. Again, you never know what you might be running into. This is not for use against official law enforcement or any other authorized authority, and in fact I don't even know if they would work, but a couple of the generic handcuffs that you can buy online, which is what I would worry about, that you may be subjected to. This is a pretty basic key that will open most of those. A lot of them are the really fake ones, and they can just use that little punch right there to press in on it and it'll release them. Again, not for use against being lawfully detained. Something I didn't order but showed up in one of my kits, and I emailed them and they said I did order it, but apparently it just isn't showing up in my order. These are actually really nice, almost about 5 inches below my wrist. These are fireproof Gore-Tex style gloves. One of the reasons I have these, they're very warm, but that's not really their main purpose. This actually goes in my medical bag in my car. If there's an accident and I need to yank somebody out, I prefer not to burn the hell out of my hands if I need to help someone. They're very small. They fit really well in the medical bag. You can pick these up for pretty cheap. They're fire resistant, not fireproof, of course. They're fire resistant, but if there's sharp metal and or hot metal, it's just really useful to have a set in case you need it. I recommend keeping it in your car, along with it's worth getting a vehicle fire extinguisher. Make sure it's rated for oil and non-oil and chemical fires, and as well as electrical fires, and make sure it's also rated for a pretty high temp, because if you pop it in the trunk of your car, some of them come with even things you can bolt them in. That's out in the car. I'm not going to go get it. For the winter time, obviously, I would have a whole different setup right now as far as clothing and stuff. I'm not going to go into it except for the fact that it's useful just to have this as a basic hood with face mask. It's useful just to have something like this. Not just for concealability, but also for warmth if it's the winter time. And of course, what I would not do without, snap lights. These are 6-inch snap lights. They're white. They say they last 12 hours. These actually last quite a bit longer than that. The brand is CYALUME. Apparently it's a different type of chemical, but they're just regular snap lights. I would buy a couple boxes, keep one in your car in case you get in, roadside assistance or whatever. That's at nighttime. I've actually used these when the power has gone out, whatever. It's better than having fire, especially when you're someone who's prone to injury. And these are actually pretty cool and critical for a survival situation if you need one, especially in an urban environment where there might be a lot of fire and or lights. These things are pretty distinctive. And again, they last forever. They're non-toxic. It's just, there's no reason not to have them. And last but certainly not least, books and manuals for all those fancy things that I showed you. Obviously, most of them should be pretty self-explanatory, but things like the Quick Clot or the Sawyer or the BioLite, the water purification tablets, all those things come with books. It doesn't really help you to buy something if you don't use it right. So I always try to keep, they tend to come with very small books at this point. I always just pop them in a Ziploc bag and you know, keep them with me because, again, you never know when you, or, I mean, I might be familiar, but that doesn't mean that someone helping me might not. Or, you know, they might not be familiar. So, again, something worth looking into, putting together and keeping with everything else. And that's essentially it. Of course, for me, I'd bring my uniform, a variety of other firearms and ammunition. Tactical gear and whatnot will have to be in a separate video, but for now, that pretty much gives you the breakdown. Again, I'm going to do my medical bag separately, and the medical bag is actually where a lot more thought needs to go into it, because it's not just a medical bag, because we have to think about situations where there might be either tear gas or chlorine gas, you know, especially with what's going on in Syria and other parts of the world. You never know. I mean, barrel bombs, who knows? I mean, obviously, I hope to not be in that situation again, or hope to not be in that situation. But you never know what you might be exposed to, what crazy stuff other people might do, or if you're in an area where there's active volcanoes or potentially earthquakes or methane, you just never know. Now, of course, some of that stuff won't work for things like methane and oxygen deprivation. They're not going to help with. I'm not talking about full-on oxygen respirators. But anyway, the medical bag talk is going to go into a lot more about that. But for right now, this is just the basic bug-out bag. It's obviously missing clothes, food, which of course dehydrate everything, stuff like that. Some fold-out solar panels that I didn't include. They just kind of snap onto your back. They're very flexible, lightweight. Those are more expensive. I didn't include some of the very expensive things just because they're not really necessary, although they might be useful. But again, for right now, that's kind of the basic thing. And really, well, just to show you very, very briefly here, that's a small little box, just a little bit larger than a shoebox. That I've actually put all those items in, and they're not. I just threw them in there. They fit in there. In this pack, the pack that I showed you, they barely filled the main compartment, and not even putting anything in there. So it leaves a lot more room for a lot of stuff. That, again, this is stuff that I have specific reasons to include. There's a lot more that should go into a bag like this. And of course, everybody's got their personal preference. You know, depending on the part of the country you live in, the part of a city you live in, what the situation is. There's a lot more that I would either add or remove. But for right now, this is kind of a good basic setup, which everything in there, not including the pack, but including the sleeping bag, cost me under $400. Obviously, a lot of those items are $5 or $6. Occasionally, there's one or two that are a lot more. If you include my medical bag, I'm looking at $600 or less. The backpack, again, I got it on sale. I think it normally retails for about $100. And of course, I don't have a tent yet, but one of the reasons is you don't necessarily need a tent. You can usually find shelter or make shelter, especially where I'm at. I'm not really worried about being exposed. So anyway, this is just to get you started. Feel free to send me any questions you have. I have a very significant write-up as to the different potential scenarios that might happen, especially with my background. I'm a little more privy to sort of the national strategic plans for things like pandemics and outbreaks and things like that. And that write-up I've posted before, but I'll repost it here as soon as I get a chance, as well as a detailed list of everything that's in here, which, by the way, it's another thing to include in your pack, lists. So, medical bag, it's all the stuff I just showed you. Having lists to put into these bags is very important because even though you pack them, there's so much crap in there that's all random that may not be useful for what you need. But if you want to have something ready to go in case there's a problem immediately, one of the other things I'll toss in there is a couple of my backup hard drives, backup identification, passport, things like that, just in case. I mean, it could be something as simple as a apartment fire. Maybe your place burns down. At least grab a couple. You know, can grab this bag, have a couple of things in it, just for stuff like that. So anyway, just to give you an idea. Probably, if not definitely, we'll be remaking this video. Without so many pauses and ums, as well as a little more description. I mean, there's actually a lot of justifications as to why I chose the specific items I did. I just didn't want to go into that in this particular video because it would be even more boring than it already is.